The wisdom of silence in times of hardship. Lecture 7046. A patient does not speak. A person who has failed in business also has nothing to say, because they no longer have the words. When someone is sick, they should be quiet in front of the doctor, receive the diagnosis, and take the prescribed medicine with gratitude. Only then can they begin to heal. A failed businessperson is much like a patient. In that state, one must accept what others say, even if the words are hard to hear. Just as bitter medicine can cure, sometimes it's the painful words that become the remedy. Even when you don't like what others are saying, accepting those words brings back energy. When you truly listen, even if what you hear seems simple or of little value, that acceptance itself will circulate energy, spark understanding, and awaken new ideas and strength. But if you ignore the advice and distance yourself from it, recovery becomes impossible. Nature operates with great precision. When you are unwell, it always sends the right medicine. But if you refuse to take it, you will not rise again. This is not merely nature's law, it is the providence of the universe and the energy it offers to help us. The problem is, we often don't understand this depth. The moment we act like we know better, we fall into even more difficult situations. A small amount of arrogance can lead to even greater hardship. Imagine a patient lying in bed, insisting that they know how to cure themselves. What would happen if others followed that person's instructions? They too would become patients. If a person who failed in business starts speaking confidently as if they still know what to do, and others listen, those people will likely meet the same fate. Never follow the words of someone who has failed. This is an unchanging principle. What we need is discernment. The answers are already in front of us, but without discernment, we continue to suffer. When discernment is clear, the right answer reveals itself. In life, there are always two choices, the right path and the wrong one. Those who are prepared will choose wisely. But those seeking shortcuts or easy gains will choose the wrong path and suffer for it. There is always a right answer. It is always presented alongside the wrong one. That is why we must learn the principle of discernment. Never accept advice from someone who has failed. This is the law of nature. Ignore their words. When you need help, seek out those who are thriving, and when they speak, follow their advice wholeheartedly. When a sick person speaks, don't follow what they say. Instead, think to yourself, they still have the energy to talk. They'll probably end up back in the hospital soon. In hospitals, the ones who talk the most are often the ones who return the most. They roam the rooms, making comments like, "That one will be back in a few days." And sure enough, that person returns. They're regulars. Though their bodies may heal temporarily, their inner maturity hasn't developed. That's why they return again and again. If you are going through hardship, close your mouth. Conserve your energy and absorb the energy of others. A patient does not have the strength to recover on their own. But by quietly receiving even a small amount of energy from those around them, they can begin to regain strength. Harsh words, blunt criticism, or even cold remarks, all of these can be medicine. If you hear such words and silently shed tears inside, that is the process of drawing out the toxins. Reflect deeply on yourself, and accept the energy of human words. Even the bitterest remarks, when received with humility, become powerful medicine. Words carry tremendous energy. When you accept them as a form of healing, you will regain your strength. Ideas will come. You will rise again, but this time with humility, with a heart open to learning, and with wisdom to live rightly in the world. Those who act superior will inevitably fall. Even those who are doing well today, if they boast or become arrogant, their downfall is already on its way. It is only a matter of time before it is revealed. When you've failed, it's time to listen, not speak. Silence shows you're ready to heal. A patient in the hospital doesn't talk much. They quietly listen to the doctor and take the prescribed medicine. Likewise, someone who has failed in business is like a patient. It's not the time to give advice, it's the time to listen. Harsh or bitter words can be medicine. Sometimes what others say may sound painful or unpleasant. But those words can carry the healing energy you need. If you accept them sincerely, they will give you strength and new ideas to rise again. Don't follow advice from someone who has failed. If a failed person keeps talking as if they know everything, it means they haven't truly recovered. If you follow their advice, you could end up in the same situation. Discernment is key. In every situation, there are two paths, the right one and the wrong one. People who are prepared will recognize and choose the right path. Those looking for shortcuts or luck will choose wrong and suffer more. Always listen to those who are wise and doing well, not those who just talk big. Speak less. Listen more. Receive energy. Talking too much drains your energy. But listening carefully to others, even difficult words, can fill you with new strength. Painful or bitter words, when accepted quietly, can cleanse your inner negativity and help you recover. Arrogance leads to another fall. Even if things start getting better, don't act superior. Stay humble, keep learning, and accept guidance. That's how true recovery and success happen. Summary: when you're down, it's time to stay quiet and listen. Even harsh words can be healing if you accept them. Don't follow advice from those who have failed. Learn to discern the right guidance. Stay humble. That's the real path to rising again. This is the story based on the above articles. When quiet ears begin to open, a path of healing born from silence. On the outskirts of Seoul, in an old warehouse turned office, one late afternoon as winter was drawing to a close, Jo Myung-ho sank heavily into a worn leather sofa that still held the scent of old dust. Though hints of spring were beginning to peek through the window, his heart remained locked in the freeze of a long, hard season. Once a rising star in the online retail world, he now stood at the edge of bankruptcy, a man who had truly fallen. For months, he had blamed others, cursed the system, and filled the air with endless words, anger, excuses, pride, regret. But today, strangely, there were no more words. He simply stared at the ceiling. Then, on a whim, he opened a drawer and pulled out a yellowed slip of paper, a note someone had given him months ago with a short piece of advice. Words use energy. Only those who listen in silence can recover that energy. He stared at the sentence for a long time. How much I've said, how much I've wasted, he murmured inwardly. Just then, his phone buzzed. Myung-ho, it's Jin-soo. I heard things have been rough lately. Can we meet? Jung Jin-soo, his closest friend from university. They had grown apart over the years, but Jin-soo was still the same calm, grounded soul. Myung-ho hesitated, then quietly agreed. A few days later, they sat together in the corner of a quiet cafe. Jin-soo didn't speak much. He simply listened as Myung-ho poured out his story. And after a while, Jin-soo finally spoke. Myung-ho, maybe it's time you stop talking and start listening. When there's too much noise, you can't see the road ahead. Right now, you just need to walk quietly. At first, those words bruised his pride. But there was warmth in Jin-soo's voice, not pity, but clarity. It didn't feel like comfort. It felt like medicine. From that day on, Myung-ho began to speak less. Even when advice felt harsh or uncomfortable, he no longer argued. He listened, reflected, and slowly began to look inward. One day, a newly hired part-time worker cautiously suggested, "Sir, what if we change the product display like this? I think it might be easier for customers." The old Myung-ho would have shut it down immediately. But now, he nodded without resistance. Let's give it a try. That small change altered the store's atmosphere. Sales gradually began to rise. One night, after closing up shop, he sat alone under the dim lights and opened his journal. In his careful handwriting, he wrote, "I fell because I refused to listen. I stood up again only after I opened my ears in silence." Below it, he added one more line with deliberate strokes. "When the world speaks to me, my only task is to listen quietly." He gazed out the window with a faint smile. The winter that had gripped his heart so tightly was finally beginning to melt into spring. The end.